Joining us now, Trump administration senior advisor for the U.S. Agency for Global Media, the great Kari Lake. So, Kari, let's start with just a vibe check on the federal government after the passage of President Trump's signature legislation.
Well, I think the federal government is bloated and out of control, but let me talk about where we can go because of this big, beautiful bill. We can bring down that bloat. We can cut the deficit. The big, beautiful bill cuts the deficit by $2 trillion. And I like what it does for the average American. It's the largest tax cut for middle class Americans in the history of taxes. This is amazing. It's going to put about $10,000, make people's on average paycheck about $10,000 more a year on what you're able to spend, basically keeping it from the government and keeping it in your own bank account so that you can spend it on the things you deem necessary. And it does a whole lot more than that. But of course, the left has to try to tear this down because it is such a victory, such a win for not just the president, but a win for the American people, that if they don't tear it down, I don't know what else they would talk about. They'd have to call it a win.
There's so much in this legislation on the tax policies you described, on immigration enforcement, reining in some of the excesses of the federal government, stopping the censorship industrial complex. But is there a sense now that Congress has kind of done their thing and now the baton has really been handed to the administration to move on from the Biden economy and get into the roaring Trump economy?
Oh, I think Congress has a lot more work to do. This was a big step in the right direction. It showed that Congress can get things done. For a while there, it was a little tentative. I know I was a little worried, and I think a lot of people were, but they managed to come together and make this amazing piece of legislation pass. But there's more work to be done. Let's face it, there's another rescission package, I think, that's coming down the pike. We need to work on budget plans, and there's a lot of work to be done. I know that there's legislation that's very important that many folks in Congress are pushing and working on, and I think they need to show that same spirit where they came together to make this happen, to do so on other important legislation.
Arizona's your home, a border state. I know a lot of your neighbors and friends care a lot about the immigration enforcement features of this legislation. We're already seeing enforcement really go into overdrive with these sweeps in MacArthur Park in Los Angeles. And then there are the corresponding reactions and riots. In a world in which Congress has funded everything the administration's asked for ICE enforcement, our expectation is that those enforcement actions will increase. Do you also expect the negative, vitriolic, violent response from the left to increase? And how do you think just the country should prepare for that?
Well, I'm hoping and I believe that with President Trump, he's not going to stand for our cities burning down. He's not going to stand for the destruction of businesses and neighborhoods at the hands of violent protesters. We have the right to protest peacefully, but when things turn violent, that's when we need to crack down on that. And I don't think President Trump will allow that to happen. I mean, you talked about, I wrote down a few things that are in this. Finishing phase 2 of the border wall, that's like Christmas. That's like a Christmas gift for me and the people of Arizona, because we've been waiting for that border wall to be finished. We wanted to spend the money to do it ourselves if need be during the Biden era, because so many people are pouring across the border. That is now going to happen. It's going to deport at least 1 million illegals who are here each year. I know Tom Homan's going to get to work and get busy taking the people who are here illegally out of our cities, our neighborhoods, and our communities, getting them on a plane back to their homeland so that we can free up, think about what it'll do, freeing up homes. It'll help end the housing crisis. There weren't enough homes for people. There will be when we take 1 million illegals and move them out of our country. It's going to free up jobs for the American people. This big, beautiful bill will do so much when it comes to our safety, our security on our streets, our economy, and just our own personal lives, where we have a little bit more money that we've earned to spend. Because every day of the week, I trust American people to decide how to spend their money over the federal government.
As a part of the federal government, you were testifying recently before Congress. We'll take a quick listen and react on the other side.
Being riddled with political bias and outright anti-American sentiment. Examples, you mentioned it, Chairman, refusing to call Hamas terrorists, glamorizing Che Guevara, airing campaign-style videos favoring President Biden, even broadcasting a graphic depicting President Trump with a swastika over his face on their news. And a ridiculous editorial firewall prevents agency leadership like myself from correcting any of the bias or having any say in the editorial content that goes on the air. This place is rotten. It's rotten to the core. President Trump has asked me to go in and help clean it up.
And that was Kari Lake talking about what was going on at the U.S. Agency for Global Media, where you work now and are trying to right the ship. It was a pretty searing critique. How do you fix it?
Well, I think we do what President Trump has asked us to do initially, and what we're working on now is shrinking the agency down to its statutory minimum. What is statutorily required by law? So many of these agencies get bloated out of control. We're going to take it back, look at the statute, and say, what do we have to do here according to law? And then anything else we're going to peel back and do away with. And so we're doing that. I've shrunk the workforce by 85%. President Trump has asked that we eliminate this agency starting next year in fiscal year 26. So until then, we'll shrink it down to a statutory minimum. I mean, you heard some of my testimony there. The people who are running this agency have no control editorially to prevent the agency from putting out anti-America propaganda that hurts our country. Yet, folks who work at Voice of America have gone to the Chinese embassy and asked CCP officials how they should be covering the CCP and China. It's appalling that that is happening. They've hired Russian spies. They've hired Russian propagandists who worked for Russian outlets who are attacking America to come over and work at Voice of America and attack America at Voice of America. Everything is upside down, and it needs to end, and that's why President Trump wants to do away with the agency. We'll take what's good, the little morsels that we can find that are worthwhile. I believe we should wrap it and put it under the State Department. The last time Voice of America was effective was when it was under the Department of State, where there were some guardrails and we could make sure what was going out on the airwaves to internationally about America was in line with what our foreign policy is and in line with what our American agenda is.
You know, this is the core difference between the second Trump term and the first Trump term. Having so many people like Kari Lake devoted to the president's vision and agenda and working right alongside him to see it all to fruition. We wish you Godspeed in that effort and hope you'll come back and brief us again soon.
Thank you. We're fighting for the American taxpayer here in Washington, D.C., and that's a big change.
A big one, a big one. Kari Lake, thanks so much for coming on the program.
Thanks.